we'll start with this. Well, an article out of Slovenia appears to indicate that unbeaten contender Emma Kozin is going to be squaring off against Noni Tenge at the end of May or the beginning of June for what could be the WBA and WBC middleweight titles. This heralds a move that I was talking about, a move by the Alphabets that I anticipated, that Claressa Shields, she won those belts way back when in March of 2019. And with that, it's been 2 full years, since Claressa campaigned as a middleweight. So decisions are going to have to be made, because unless she plans on returning to the middleweight division and having fights there,
is she?
Having just fought for the undisputed crown at junior middleweight, unless she set the toggle between weights in defense of those titles, something's got to give. Something's got to happen. And apparently, if this story checks out, Emma Kozin could very well become this division's unified champion after Claressa Shields. What do I think about this? What do I think about this news? It's encouraging. It's encouraging because it moves the ranks along, and it's the next cycle, what could be the next cycle
champions
of middleweight champions. I mean, it's just not fair. It's not fair to the other girls that Claressa would have been allowed to hold on to these titles for this amount of time, having not defended them against any of the contenders at these weights. I wouldn't have any problem with Claressa holding all those belts if she were still campaigning there, if she were toggling between being the undisputed champion at 154 and being the undisputed champion at 160. But 160 activity there outside of what Savannah Marshall's been doing. Savannah Marshall, who's the current reigning WBO middleweight champion. Outside of her fights, this division, for the most part, has been frozen.
There's a rumor the IBF title's already vacant.
I'll tell you what I think. I could see a situation where Emma Kozin locks horns with Noni Tenge for what are WBA, WBC titles. Sometime later, perhaps the fight between Savannah and Femke Hermans, perhaps the fight between them, that gets rescheduled. We know that, she's supposed to fight Femke already, but one thing led to another, and Maria Lindberg ended up standing in Femke's place. Thus, I could see the Femke Hermans fight being rescheduled for sometime this summer. That fight could be for a title, could be for the IBF title, and then perhaps Savannah will win that fight and move into a fight with the winner of Kozin versus Tenge, which, if I'm being honest, I think is going to be Emma Kozin. Savannah Marshall could see herself becoming this division's undisputed champion before this year is out, depending on how the cookie crumbles. There's been a lot of talk about a Shields fight in the fall and winter months, but I told you, I don't see it happening. Right now, Claressa Shields is preoccupied dipping her toe in the pool of mixed martial arts, and I hardly think that's going to be an isolated incident. I hardly think that's going to be a one-off kind of thing, a one-time engagement. She signed a contract with that PFL league, and I think she might make at least 2 appearances in the octagon this year.
Wouldn't bank on Shields versus Marshall happening this year.
That being said, this could be the year that Savannah Marshall becomes a unified champion. I've heard some rumors, some rumblings of a potential move upstairs, but I don't see that happening. At least not straight away, at least not this year. This year, Frencion Cruz and Aline Cederuz are set to unify titles in the very near future.
They're busy.
And that ties up all 4 Alphabet titles at super middleweight. I think that the Femke Hermans fight could be rescheduled, and that fight could end up being for 2 Alphabet titles instead of just the one, just Savannah's. We'll see what happens. Other news, in light of this past weekend's action between Katie Taylor and Natasha Jonas, their exhilarating contest, reigning super featherweight WBO champion Mikaela Mayer took to Twitter, posted a comment that reads, "Can't wait for Taylor versus Mayer." And it was a strange comment, it was, because you can't fault Mikaela Mayer for expressing enthusiasm at that kind of a fight between her and Katie Taylor. But at the same time, there's so much unfinished business in the super featherweight division that perhaps she's focused on the wrong thing. She's not going to have that Alicia Baumgartner fight. She's not having that Maiva Hamadouche fight. She seems a ways out from a Terry Harpier fight. You guys stop to think about how far Terry Harpier has come and the kind of resume that she's amassed in a career that's parallel to Mikaela's. Terry's already locked horns with Eva Wahlstrom, given unbeaten Katharina Saunders her first professional loss, gave a Fight of the Year performance against Natasha Jonas, and now she set the unified titles in a little over a week's time with Hyun Mi Choi.
Well, Michaela's worried about a Katie Taylor fight.
Why aren't we seeing this same enthusiasm towards unifying this division in a unification match with Mai Mohammadouche? What happened to that? Oh, we're going to leave all the legwork to Terry?
Huh?
Terry and Steffi, they've got to do it all?
Huh?
May is set to potentially fight Erika Farias of Argentina, who still hasn't rebounded off those 2 consecutive losses to Jessica McCaskill. Just being honest, this stuff is getting harder and harder to look past, even harder to defend.
Michaela don't need to be worrying about no Katie Taylor fight.
Mai Mohammadouche, Alicia Baumgartner, Terry Hart-Pierre, they're all right there. And that's where her focus should lie. That's where it should be. That's what she needs to be worrying about. What's going on in her own division. Yeah, Katie Taylor took on Natasha Jonas, who moved up from 130 to 135. But everybody knows that Katie and Natasha have a lot of history. That's what set the precedence for that match. That's what set the stage. All of that is besides the point, because Michaela's part of that 130-pound conversation, that undisputed conversation. Given young Terry's trajectory, you wonder that she won't be the last woman standing at 130 pounds. When all the smoke settles and it's all said and done, you wonder that Terry Hart-Pierre won't end up being that division's undisputed champion, because things with Michaela, I just don't know. In super middleweight news, the developing situation between Billy Joe Saunders, Canelo Alvarez, and the ring size. Apparently, per tweet from Michael Benson, Billy Joe Saunders has revealed there is a dispute over the ring size for the Canelo fight on Saturday. His father, Tom Saunders, said Matchroom initially proposed an 18-foot ring, then 20 feet, but he's insisted Billy Joe Saunders won't fight if it's not a 22-foot ring minimum. You know, the rules indicate that the ring in the state of Texas can't be any smaller than 16 feet, any larger than 32 feet. Anywhere between 18 and 20 and 22 is, permissible, though ultimately it doesn't really fall on that. It falls on what the two teams agreed to, what is stipulated in the contract, if the ring size is in fact stipulated in the contract, if it's supposed to be a certain size. Tom Saunders, Billy's father, he was quoted as saying, Eddie Hearn, he has delivered this fight, but at what cost? He's working against us in every opportunity. To face Canelo in an 18 to 20-foot ring, that's ridiculous. Inner ring has to be 22 feet, otherwise, we're flying home. Whereas Billy, he was quoted as saying, when I've got 70,000 screaming against me, that puts me up a gear. I'm not gonna go and shit myself. Fucking hell, all these people. When I hear them booing, that's gonna lift me. When I leave the ring, they'll be cheering.
Yeah, Billy's putting on a brave face.
Clear to see, both he and members of his team are lacking a lot of confidence ahead of this fight. He's got anyone from his father to Tyson Fury griping, crying, bitching, and moaning and complaining about anything from the ring size to rumors about Canelo Alvarez's ped use. And it's not even that ped stuff isn't cause for concern. It is. Canelo Alvarez did in fact test positive for a weight-cutting agent. But so did Billy Joe Saunders, didn't he?
Something.
Unless we're supposed to believe his Flonase story, which caused that Demetrius Andrade fight to collapse.
Another thing too, in Vegas, I spoke to a lot of people. I was there for 4.5 weeks. A lot of boxers, a lot of trainers, a lot of ex-boxers, and there was a few people telling me a few tricks of the Canelo team, right? Because we all know they like the Mexican beef, and we all know they like it juicy, and they normally stop that about 3 weeks before the fight. In small doses. He likes his Mexican beef, very juicy, right? And that whole complete gym is known for that. And another thing, I was speaking to one fellow, and he said, right, and he was an oldish guy, and he said about his hand wraps. I said, what do you mean? He said, man, check his hand wraps. He said, in big fights, he overwraps his hands. I said, yeah. He said he has his gloves made to compensate for the overwrapping. He said he don't do it in every fight. I said, no. Right? Now, I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm listening, I'm taking these things on board.
The guy's a nervous wreck. What's going on? They're not confident ahead of this fight. They're just not. They get to Vegas, the boxing birdies get in their ear, they start filling their head full of stuff. And let me tell you something. You didn't need to touch base in Vegas. You didn't need to hear all this different stuff to know that Canelo Alvarez is going to approach this fight with certain advantages. And that's just the nature of the beast. That's just the way it is. And it didn't start with him, or Floyd Mayweather Jr., or Oscar De La Hoya before him.
A-sides and B-sides, bitch.
Don't hate the player, hate the game, baby.
Remember when I told you guys 1 or 2 videos ago that it looks like what Billy Joe Saunders wants is to be on even terrain with Canelo Alvarez? That it sounds a lot like what he wants is Canelo Alvarez treatment, and that's just not going to happen. That's not the case. That for that, you might as well not even have this fucking fight, because it ain't going to happen. And all that these constant gripes from several members of Billy Joe Saunders' team, his friends and his family, all this accents, all it denotes is nervousness in the Saunders camp. They're not confident ahead of this fight. The nerve on Tom Saunders, Billy's father, bringing up Clenbow stakes. And it's not that it shouldn't be brought up. God only knows. We talked about that situation extensively here on the channel. The same way we talked about Billy Joe Saunders' situation with Flonase extensively here on the channel. But the nerve of this guy bringing up those Clenbow stakes, knowing that his own son has a sketchy past and a sketchy history, for him to be so oblivious to this as to bring up Canelo's dirty laundry, making no light of Billy's, that accents nervousness. That accents a lack of confidence, which goes back to what I've been telling you guys month after month.
I don't want this fight.
I don't know that these guys really want these opportunities. I don't know that these guys really want a Canelo Alvarez fight, because they get the fight and they just proceed to complaining like they didn't know what they signed up for. This is Canelo Alvarez,
Baby. Cash money Canelo, baby, bubba.
and what's happening here is not exclusive or specific to Canelo Alvarez. He didn't start this. This is a tradition in the sport of boxing. Whenever you're facing the sport's biggest cash cow, that cash cow is going to be entitled to certain rights, certain entitlements, and quite obvious preferential treatment. It's never been different. Is this way here today for Canelo Alvarez? It was that way for Floyd Mayweather Jr., it's still that way for anybody that finds themselves opposite the ring of Manny Pacquiao. He'll be the A-side. He'll call the shots. He'll tell you what to do. And before all of them, Oscar, I mean, the list goes on. This is not something new. The question here, the real question is, do you believe in yourself that much to operate under these circumstances? Because these are the circumstances for everybody. When you're squaring off against boxing's cash cow, you're not going to be on even terrain. But better still, can you do it?
What it takes.
'Cause it's not like it hasn't been done before. It has.
This is what it takes to cross over.
Even if by the time this video is uploaded, all of these issues are reconciled, it's not going to rewrite history. It's not going to change the past. The record books will show that ahead of this fight, Billy Joe Saunders, members of his team, members of his family, spent the entire build-up griping, crying, bitching, moaning, peeing, and shitting because they couldn't have things their way, or because they weren't on even terrain. Nobody's on even terrain with the cash cow of boxing.
You're still supposed to like your chances.
You're still expected to be brimming with confidence, which Billy Joe Saunders, he doesn't seem to be.
Fighters, and this is exactly why he's on a Europe tour as we speak. This is why Canelo is the pioneer of the NBF belt, no black fighters witness protection franchise, because again, Canelo is the best non-black fighter in the world. That's what he is, because he don't fight any black fighters, which is the most dominant race, because he don't want to fight. He don't want to have flashbacks of what happened to him when he fought Floyd.
You know, we've touched on this before.
Tribalism.
The injection of tribalist sentiments in the sport of boxing, where in all actuality they don't belong. If you let that individual, Aki TV, tell the story, you'd have thought Canelo Alvarez never fought a black fighter since the Floyd Mayweather Jr. fight. If you let him tell the story, when Canelo Alvarez fought Daniel Jacobs, didn't he? Daniel Jacobs, who was the IBF champion at the time, who had just come off of giving Sergey Dedevianchenko his first professional loss. Long before Jermall Charlo got his hands on him. It's Jermall Charlo that this Aki guy is caping for.
And we've been all through this.
No, before Canelo Alvarez even lost to Floyd Mayweather Jr., his only recorded professional loss, he fought the then unbeaten Austin Trout. After he lost to Floyd, didn't stop there, he fought Erislandy Lara, who we all know there's never been a financial incentive to give Lara an opportunity. There's never been a financial incentive to give Lara a chance. But Canelo Alvarez did just that, because he wanted to, against his promotional team's best wishes. They didn't want him to have that fight, but he had it. After that, several years later, took on Daniel Jacobs. So what the fuck is Aki and his chopped cheese sandwiches talking about? It's almost like what Aki wants is for Canelo Alvarez to give only certain fighters of a certain denomination that fit a certain description preferential treatment.
Is that it?
As if he's only supposed to fight those kinds of fighters when those are the kinds of fighters that Jermall Charlo isn't fighting. As we speak, there's an unbeaten 2-division middleweight champion in the same division as Jermall, and you can't get him to give that guy the time of day. But you want to chastise Canelo Alvarez, who's actually fought more black middleweight champions than Jermall.
That's a fact.
Moreover, Daniel Jacobs has a more robust body of work than either Jermall Charlo or Demetrius Andrade. So why is Aki so conveniently mulling over these facts, mulling over these particulars? Daniel Jacobs beat Sergey Devianchenko before Jermall Charlo got his hands on him, before even Gennady Golovkin got his hands on him. Gave Peter Quillen his first professional loss by stopping him in the first round. Fought Sergio Morva 2 times.
What, Daniel Jacobs doesn't count?
But Jermall does, who has an even thinner resume than Daniel. We've talked about this invisible quota that Canelo Alvarez is being held to by a small group, small faction of fight fans. They think that unless he's fighting certain fighters of a particular denomination, that he's not fighting good fighters. You know what? I guess that makes 2 of them, because Jermall Charlo, he ain't fighting those kinds of fighters either, is he?
Why aren't you mad at him?
He's about to fight Juan Montiel. I wonder who Aki thinks is a better fighter, Juan Montiel or Demetrius Andrade, who you can't get Jermall Charlo to fight. Canelo doesn't seem to have a very high opinion of him either. Did give Jermall Charlo the green light along with 2 others, David Benavidez. I even think he gave Artur Beterbiev the green light for the future. I'm going to give it to you straight, because it's the only way I know how to give it to you. Dante's Boxing Nation gave Aki and his chopped cheese sandwiches a hood pass. So now Aki caters and panders to the same audience that Dante's Boxing Nation panders to. An audience which primarily isn't comprised of boxing fans. They're hybrid hip-hop / world star / boxing fans that don't know both fucking diddly about this sport. Because if they did, they wouldn't be listening to this guy.
We're gonna get into why that's bad for the sport in the next video.